On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, Keith and I talk about James Harden, who has finally spoken. Speaking nationally to Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports, he dives into a lot of things about the 76ers, his contractual situation, and why he took this route. We'll get into it next right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. What's up, D?
What's going on, man? How you doing? Hope you had a good weekend.
Yeah, it was great.
Good, man. Good. Same here. No complaints at all. Feeling good. Hopefully we have a good week here. We got to thank everybody and welcome you all to Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia, alongside my co-host and partner, Keith Pompey, Sixers beat writer for the Inquirer.com. We thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. Well, Keith, the mystery man, if you will, or the silent man, if you will, and James Harden, he has spoken. He has spoken to Chris Haynes, someone you're very familiar with, NBA people, very familiar with Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports. Had a chance to speak with James Harden on the record, finally talking about his contractual situation. So we'll start there. Later on, we'll talk about why Daryl Morey had a pretty good offseason, all things considered, and also wrapping up the Summer League and what stood out to us in the Summer League, not only from the Sixers perspective, but around the association as well. But Keith, first I want to talk to you, throw a couple, one quote at you that specifically I think everybody is jumping on as far as the Sixers go for what James Harden had to say. And here's the quote. This is James Harden, again, to Chris Haynes. I had conversations with Daryl, and it was explained how we could get better and what the market value was for certain players. I told Daryl to improve the roster, sign whoever we needed to sign, and give me whatever is left over, Harden told Yahoo Sports. This is how bad I want to win. I want to compete for a championship. That's all that matters to me at this stage. I'm willing to take less to put us in position to accomplish that, end quote. Now, we hear it. We hope that that's the case. We saw what his play was like. I'll give you some more things later on, Keith, as we talk about it, because he gets into the hamstring, his average for the season, what others might say if it was a different player with those same numbers. But I give you that quote. What do you make of what James Harden said there?
I mean, I make of it that they really didn't have any other options. I mean, the thing is, PJ Tucker was going to become a 76er, right? And it is one of those things where they couldn't make trades. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. And James did it. Now, again, yes, he probably did. He did have a conversation with Daryl, and saying like, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. But let's face it, the reason why he had the conversation, not Joel, not Tobias, not all these other guys, was because he was the one who had the opportunity to opt in. And I also feel like, it's one of those things is really good optics. I mean, everything he's saying is true. And the good part that Haynes did was in this article, he had James talking about it. Beforehand, it was his manager, it was the Sixers, it was, anonymous sources. Everyone said what James just said. And it's not surprising because this is something that James said he was going to do whatever he could do. But again, it's one of those things, like you said, and we'll get to it later, but it's one of those things where, you know what, all this is great, but they still got to produce and they still got to win.
And the other part for me that you just said is that he said this, and he said this in the past. But until you do it, it's all just talk. It's all, walk the walk. If you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. Well, we weren't sure if he was going to walk that walk. and actually take less money and actually do something that's more beneficial for the team instead of selfishly, if you will, go for a big number. I wouldn't have destroyed him for taking 47.4 million, and I wouldn't have destroyed him if he had decided to opt out and go elsewhere and get a larger contract, because we know how the NBA is and how flaky things can be around the association when it comes to these board of governors and how they decide to distribute the money. They'll move you in a second, right? So player empowerment is real, and I don't have a problem with it in certain situations. We can talk about Kyrie Irving, how he handles things. I'm just saying that even with player empowerment, there's a way to go about it. He stepped up. He said what he said, and he is following through, and that's why he gets a lot of love and you know, just some good vibes right now from Sixer fans based on this, saying, go do what you need to do to help the team. I'll take what's left over. And the other part with that, Keith, is like we've talked about. He doesn't need the money. He seems to always be good with his money, right? And outside of going out there and having some fun, I mean, the guy makes almost like $100 million per year. So him going out and having fun and spending his money however he wants to spend it, that's him. That's his business. I'm sure he has a business manager to make sure his money is not going anywhere. He is not wanting for anything right now. So for him to do this again, it just goes to show that he is about team now. That's great. That's step one. Step two, as you mentioned, is to go out there and perform during the regular season, to make sure, as you talk about being about it, go out there and perform and do your thing. Now, he mentioned this too, and I wanted to bring this to you. He talked about them having a deeper team and how they needed to have that depth, and we've talked about it all season. But he was saying, listen, I don't really listen to what people are saying. I wasn't right last season, and I almost averaged a triple-double. If anybody else had those numbers, we'd be talking about them getting the max. People were used to seeing me average 40, 30 points, and so they viewed it as a down year. I was in Philadelphia for a couple of months, and I had to learn on the fly. That just was what it was. I'm in a good space physically and mentally right now, and I'm just looking forward to next season, end quote.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with that. You know, we talk about $47 million. There's not a lot of people in the NBA making $47 million, right? Also, the one thing that, you know, I get the stats, but when you factor in James shot 32.6% on threes, which was the lowest of his career, I believe. You know, he shot 32.6% in 21 games as a 76er. That's the lowest percentage of his career. He shot 40.2% from the field, which is the lowest percent of his career. Now, you know, unfortunately, when you're a three-time scoring champion and you're an MVP, you know, you're judged differently than anyone else. And also, when you factor in the 21 points that he did average this year, you know, that was the second lowest. That was the lowest total since his third year in the NBA, right? And he also averaged 7.1 turnovers this year. So, you know, it's just one. I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, you know, he's been such a great player over the last couple of years that unfortunately he doesn't get judged by other all-star type players. I mean, this is a top 75 guy. And let's face it, you know, 76ers, the way that he played last year, injury or not, if the 76ers, if he would have taken 47 million and then the 76ers would have gave him the super max extension, you know, they would have looked bad. So right now, you know, the way this whole thing is setting up is where, you know, he took less, people are happy, but I believe that if he plays to a certain level, he's going to get paid. I mean, he's going to get paid.
Yeah, and you're right. Before we wrap this one up, he is different. He's James Harden. Forget about the top 75. He was top 20 still last season as he made the All-Star team yet again. So top 24, however you want to look at it, he's still an All-Star level player at this stage of his career, because with those numbers, still close to a triple-double, all of that, you're still looked at as one of the best players in the league. So you were judged differently than what some others are doing, especially what you've done in the past. That also speaks about your present and hopefully for your future in the NBA. All right, man. Listen, we need to talk about the guy who has put this team together this offseason, adding these pieces, negotiating with James Harden, as he mentioned, Daryl Morey. We'll talk about him and why his summer has been pretty good. Next, right here, Locked On 76ers.
Right now, let's talk about Bet Online. Bet Online is a great thing, a great place to go to get bets, odds, and all that other stuff, right? So this is what you need to know. Bet Online is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device and learn more about the trends and actions. Bet online, where the game starts. Do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
You got to do it today, people. It's the summertime. Have some fun. Enjoy yourself. Make some money because you're spending all this money for vacation. Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Well, Keith, Daryl Morey, his name was mentioned from James Harden in this story, and we've talked about him in passing. He and Elton Brand, the job that they've done this offseason and what they were able to do. But when you go out there and we talk about depth, we talk about toughness, we talked about versatility in the offseason for this basketball team. And I think they've addressed that, especially for me as someone who harps on it so much about them needing to take care of the wing. And they did that from Tucker to Melton. Even though he's a guard, he has this crazy wingspan, so he helps out. We can defend multiple positions, especially when teams go a little bit smaller, where he can body up with even a wingman who is somewhere between, let's say, 6'5", 6'6", not necessarily the 6'8" guys, but he can also get in there and get dirty with those guys as well. Then you go Daniel House and taking a swing on what Trevelyan Queen is or may not be. So he's done a nice job. There's still some things, as we've talked about, that you might have to address from the backup big man position if you're going to go with a veteran on the veteran minimum, or even adding another shooter at a cheap price as well. I say for me, Keith, I think that Daryl Morey, and I'll include Elton Brand in this, have done a fine job with how they've attacked this offseason, needing help from James Harden, but maximizing their opportunity in their situation to go out there and address the pieces that they needed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they have. I think a lot of it is, I mean, this is good, but there are two things that you did say. They still need, I think they need a backup center, or you got to see, like, I mean, let's say if Charles Bassey or B-Ball Paul shows us something, right? I get that, right? Then we could go with that. But you also need a point guard. You need a traditional point guard. But for the moves that they made, I'll give them credit. The thing is, though, I hate to say this, in order for them to be successful, a lot is going to have to do with Embiid's health, his play, and James Harden. He's going to have to be more of not what we saw last year, but before that, right? Secondly, we got to see how these guys play. I mean, I get it. A lot of hype, a lot of this and that, but we got to see how they play.
I'm just talking about the moves itself. I mean, yeah, of course.
The moves itself, but I like the moves, but I love what Boston did, and I love what Milwaukee did. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Right now, let's see, and this is what I'm saying, we got to wait and see. Nothing against the good moves, but D, you work on the radio show. I know what's going to happen come December if some of these dudes struggle. You're going to get calls on your show at 6 o'clock, as soon as 6 o'clock or after the Sixers game. He brought too many of these Houston guys in here. That's what he did. He got these Houston guys. I'm telling you, I don't like it. I don't like it. So what I'm saying is I like the toughness factor. But again, I like it, but the true test is going to come. Because see, it can right now people loving them, but if these dudes don't produce, it's going to go the opposite way.
Well, first, let's get this straight. You don't have to wait till December about the Houston part of it. People are already calling in saying they don't like the fact that they brought in all these Houston guys. So there's that. I agree with you because for me, look, we have to go through these steps to get to the regular season, get to the postseason. The offseason is what the offseason is, from the draft to free agency and trades all around in that same area there for those couple of weeks. We know the steps. But for right now, on the surface of what they've done, I've liked it. Yes, it has to translate. I like also what Boston has done. I've also liked what Milwaukee has done. They've done stuff in the past, other teams too, that I've liked and said, all right, let's see how it plays out in the offseason. And it didn't work. Just like it couldn't work here with the Sixers. I like Malcolm Brogdon to Boston and Danilo Gallinari. Is Malcolm Brogdon going to accept the role off the bench? Is Marcus Smart, if he's struggling, going to accept that he might have
I think
to
Malcolm Brogdon is starting, bro.
All right, so somebody's coming off the bench.
Yeah,
so
I think he's starting.
So Marcus Smart is the defensive player of the year. He's not coming out of the lineup. So I don't know how they're going to do that and how that's going to affect the team. So therefore, those ripple effects could also say that even though we like to move on the surface of what Boston has done, maybe that'll cause some consternation within their locker room where it'll be a problem. So we don't know how it's going to play out in any of these organizations with any of these things that they've done. But I think at least on the surface, and I'm not sitting here patting Daryl Morey on the back, I'm just simply giving him his, all right, you did a nice job this offseason. Yes, the big man thing still needs to be addressed, and the same for a shooting. I don't know how much about a point guard because I think they have enough there. Between Melton as the backup to Maxey and Harden, and even Milton if he's still around, I think they have enough. Yes, a pure point guard you would like, of course, to come in and also, but where would his minutes come when you have these other 3 or 4 guards that are going to take up a lot of minutes? I don't even know where that guy fits, me personally. But this is something. And listen, DeAnthony Melton may not be able to dribble all that well, but he's going to handle the ball sometimes. He did start for Ja Morant occasionally when he was out. They still
I got a question for you. I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
What if New York goes out and get Donovan Mitchell?
Okay.
I'm just asking you. I mean, what does that say?
Doesn't scare me much because what are they giving up to get Donovan Mitchell?
I mean,
I think if you get Donovan Mitchell, you lose somebody like Julius Randle because he's going to feel like he should be getting the bulk of the touches. I feel like then watching the body language of RJ Barrett, where does he fit in if he's not traded? And I think he has to be included in the deal.
Yeah, you got to get him out of there.
Yeah, they've
been trying to give him a max. He got to go.
Right. So I just wonder how Julius Randle manages something like that. Donovan Mitchell was Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell was going to score. Where do they defend? Because now you're talking about, and I love Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, Donovan Mitchell, your 3 best players. They don't defend. Mitchell Robinson, yes, will clean things up on the back end. He can't stay on the floor. He can't stay healthy. Where's your other defender? Who is your other defender? I don't even know who that is. Maybe at the 2-guard spot. Evan Fournier, is he still on the team? Is he traded out there? I don't know. That doesn't do much for me with how New York would build it with Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, and Julius Randle as their core. They can score. Can they stop anybody? The Sixers can score, but we also know that with Joel Embiid, he can defend. Matisse Thybulle can defend. Now PJ Tucker, Daniel House, they can defend. DeAnthony Melton can defend. I don't know where those pieces are for the Knicks, so that doesn't scare me.
Okay. All right, player. Okay, my man. Hey, we got something for you, bro.
All right.
The Brooklyn Nets say they will start their preseason schedule on October 3rd versus the 76ers.
October 3rd. In Brooklyn or here?
In Brooklyn.
Okay.
In Brooklyn.
All right. So you get to see
Simmons,
huh?
Ben Simmons time. Yep.
Little Ben Simmons. Okay. Brooklyn Sixers. He'll love that because it's up there. And let's see how he handles it here and goes from there. But okay. And I'm sure that might even be a home and home. Is it a home and home or just?
I don't know. It just said they open up this thing against the Sixers. Yeah.
All right.
October 3rd. Yeah.
Look at that, folks. You listen to the Locked On 76ers podcast and you get immediate breaking news from Keith Pompey. All right, on the other side, man, we need to talk about what we saw from Summer League, some things we liked, some things we didn't like as we wrap this one up on a Monday in the summertime. Always great to be with you. Keith Pompey, Devon Givens, Locked On 76ers. All right, Keith, record doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Don't care. If they didn't win a championship, it doesn't matter. They didn't get those shiny rings that the Portland Trailblazers got from winning the Summer League crown in Las Vegas. But nevertheless, Michael Foster, he earned himself at least a training camp invite with his contract. Trevelyan Queen has some Sixer fans excited. Charles Bassey played a good amount of games and showed some positive signs. Also showed some things where he's still behind. Paul Reed, they got rid of him quickly. As far as his game minutes went, they put him on the seat, on the shelf, on ice very fast after a few games. And Isaiah Joe looked really good during the Summer League. What were some of your takeaways from the Sixers since you traveled from Utah and Salt Lake Summer League to Las Vegas for the Las Vegas Summer League as well?
My thing with the Sixers, Isaiah Joe impressed me, of course. B-Ball Paul did. There was a guy, Malik Ellison. I felt like as the games progressed and the more he got opportunities, he started to show me stuff. Same with what's his name? Charlie Brown II. Now the junior. Now here's the thing with Charlie Brown though. The thing that stood out to me is like, hey, I like the way he plays. The problem is he wasn't hitting a lot of shots, right? But he was playing with a lot of energy. But two of the guys you talk about, and I know he's on a two-way, but when you have a Melton and when you have a Daniel House, and these are the type of gritty guys that you want, right? So then when you have a guy like Charlie Brown and he's not making shots, I get it. I know he's on a two-way, but that's also like, it kind of like, it kind of might open up a slot for a different type of player, like a shooter or someone like that. But to me, the guys really played well. The only problem is I'm looking at some of these dudes and I'm like, okay, so I know you with the Sixers, but you're basically showcasing your skills to be with another team.
That's
basically that's what it is. That's basically what it's all about. But it was a lot of guys, but to me, the only two guys that I really saw and I said to myself, like, okay, these guys are legitimate, was Paul, B-Ball Paul, and Isaiah Joe. Now, I do think that Charles Bassey was trying, but the guard play was so sporadic that there was times where he really couldn't get a feel. You know what I mean? But then when they fed him and they featurized him, because let's face it, it was all about B-Ball Paul when he was there at the 4. But when they featured him, he looked good. But for the most part, they were the only two guys who were the most consistent. I'm talking about B-Ball, Paul, and Isaiah Joe.
So to your point with the guard play, Cassius Winston, did he do anything for you?
Nah, not really. I mean, I like Cassius. Like, he's smaller than I thought. When you're looking at it, you got to ask yourself, is Cassius Winston better than Shake Milton? No. You know what I'm saying? No. He's
more of a pure point guard, but he won't take his minutes from him. No.
Yeah, he's more of a pure point guard. But like the one thing when we're talking about it, they're going to do a lot of the staggering things for the most part. And James is going to have a ball in his hand. Then there's going to be like to me, like I'm talking about getting a third point guard. I'm talking about somebody that's a veteran, somebody that's experienced. Cassius looked good. I mean, he played well. The shot wasn't always there, but at the same time, I don't know if he's the type of guy that they need at the end of the bench. You know what I mean? Now, again, he could go down there and play in the G League and do all this other stuff. But when I look at it, I'm looking at a pure shooter or a pure point. You know what I mean? Someone that you can bring in, like, heck, right at this point, you might as well just get a veteran. like, a veteran guy who's a leader in the locker room, huh?
Right? Yeah, they might do something like that, somewhere along the lines of Ish Smith, something like that. Even though
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what they need. Yeah,
that type of name. All right, finally, with the summer league, others that may be impressed you a little bit from around the league. One guy for me was who was it that really impressed me was Kenneth Lofton Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies.
oh yeah.
I liked his level of play. I like what he was able to do. Also, Samaki Walker's son, who just signed with the Portland Trailblazers. I thought he played well. Also, he signed a 3-year contract with the Trailblazers, and I'm mad at myself because I'm having a brain cramp with his first name. But I thought those two really stood out. And Memphis always finds these unconventional type of players, and it works out. Kenneth Lofton Jr. put up some solid numbers. The knock on him with Louisiana Tech was his body was just too out of shape. He couldn't get it done. But now maybe being in the NBA program, if he is going to be on the roster and the summer on the G League team, possibly they'll maybe round his body out to a little bit more a better shape where he can contribute to that basketball team. So those two players for me really stood out. And Colin Gillespie, I thought he showed himself well, like we talked about during pre-draft. Someone sort of drafted him. He landed in a pretty good spot. Let's see if he makes that Denver Nuggets team. So 3 players for me that stood out in the summer league overall. But listen, man, I thank you for taking the time as always on a Monday. We thank everybody out there for listening to us. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you're going to be able to check in with us once again on Tuesday. Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Now make your second listen, Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Keith, can you let people know?
Can I say something before I let people know? You asked if they were a home and home, those preseason
Brooklyn.
games. Nah. What it is the Sixers, because of Brooklyn. After that, they'll play Miami. They'll play the Bucks, and then they'll play the Timberwolves. So it's not a home and home, and the game is in Brooklyn.
Okay, you got it. All right. Well, folks, you can check us out on Twitter for Keith at Pompey on Sixers, myself at Devon G975 on Twitter, Keith at Inquirer.com, and you can find my work this over the next 2 weeks, 2 to 6 on 97.5 The Fanatic FM radio in Philadelphia, and I'll have you covered from there. Keith, on the YouTube side, let them know.
Yeah, you can follow us on YouTube. Just go to the YouTube channel, Locked On 76er Podcast YouTube channel. When you see that Liberty Bell, right, up on the top, click on that Liberty Bell, and that's how you can subscribe to us. You can see us cutting each other off, doing all types of stuff, disagreeing about Daryl Morey's picks and all this other stuff or acquisition.
All right. That's all right.
We don't do that, though. We don't do that. But you can subscribe there to do that. But like my man said, you can listen to him on the radio. You can go to Inquirer.com or pick up a Philadelphia Inquirer and get me. But also follow us on Twitter. Follow my man D at Devon G975. Follow me at Pompey on Sixers. And like I always say, do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
You won't be disappointed. You won't be disappointed. Keith, thanks, man, as always. And folks, thank you again for taking time out during the summer and listening to us and watching as well. We appreciate it. Have a good one.
Peace, bro. Peace.